Right now, we stand here as men who refute their Jewishness and the Holocaust being hijacked by an occupation which has led to conflict for so many innocent people. Whether the victims of October the 7th in Israel or the ongoing attack on Gaza, all are victims of this dehumanization. How do we resist?
That was a snippet of Zone of Interest director Jonathan Glazer's acceptance speech after winning the Academy Award for Best International Film. The speech continues to elicit backlash. Variety says more than 1,000 Jewish creatives, executives, and Hollywood professionals signed a letter earlier this week denouncing Glazer's speech, writing, quote, "We refute our Jewishness being hijacked for the purpose of drawing a moral equivalence between a Nazi regime that sought to exterminate a race of people and an Israeli nation that seeks to avert its own extermination." Glazer declined Variety's request for comment.
In a somewhat embarrassing turn of events, the Variety article got slapped with a community note on X, which points out that the letter condemning Glazer is a simple Google form that doesn't require proof that the signatories are either Jewish or creatives. One of the signatories is listed as SAG-AFTRA member named River to the Sea, River to the Sea, aka obviously River to the Sea. Additionally, CNN chose to run a deeply unfavorable review of the now 4-month-old movie that seems to have missed the point of the film, in which some people are asking whether or not it's a kind of attack on Glazer for his speech. The film itself, rather, addresses the banality of evil and the complicity of ordinary people in the horrors of the Nazi death camps. The review describes that Oscar-winning film as rather tedious, complaining that the conversations and daily routines are repetitious, which again is part of the point of the film. Angels in America screenwriter and Pulitzer Prize winner Tony Kushner pushed back in an interview with The Hollywood Reporter, saying that Glazer's statement was pretty obvious. Quote, "What Glazer is saying is so simple. He's saying Jewishness, Jewish identity, Jewish history, the history of the Holocaust, the history of Jewish suffering, must not be used as an excuse for a project of dehumanizing or slaughtering other people. This is a misappropriation of what it means to be a Jew, what the Holocaust meant, and he rejects that. Who doesn't agree with that? What kind of person thinks that what's going on in Gaza now is acceptable? And if you find yourself saying out loud and in public, oh, it's fine with me because what they're doing, because you feel that it's the only choice for you because you're a Jew, is to defend everything that Israel does, shame on you." Writer Naomi Klein also weighed in a viral op-ed for The Guardian, saying that if you were upset by Glazer, then the speech worked. As she writes, making the audience uncomfortable was the point. Now, the question that's going around now, Robby, is Hollywood trying to blacklist Glazer or somehow punish him for having made that speech on such a prominent, kind of uncensorable stage?
I mean, are they? He made, his remarks, and some people are supporting them and signaling their support, and some people are disagreeing with them and condemning them, and it seems like it's just a exchange of ideas. I mean, I actually don't think the statement, even though I don't agree that what's going on is akin to the Holocaust in any way, shape, or form, I didn't find the statement particularly objectionable. I think where he got himself into trouble is that the phrase "refute your Jewishness" when divorced from the rest of the context of that sentence sounds pretty bad, and was not the way. I get what he's saying. He does not want the fact that this happened to what happened on October 7th, what happened to Jewish people, to be used as some cover for what he views as similar horrors now going the other direction. I think the way it's phrased makes it sound like he's saying, I'm ashamed to be a Jew or something, in like a collective guilt kind of way. But again, I don't really think the statement is controversial. Yeah, I think if he had avoided that exact 3-word construction, it would not have necessarily inspired some backlash. But well,
I agree that divorcing that 3-word construction from the rest of what he said does make it sound like he was saying something different, which I think is why we got so many people doing exactly that, selectively editing his remarks to exclude the part of the sentence that would have given the context that I think made it pretty easy to understand if you, like me, were watching it live. We saw a lot of interlocutors, and frankly, I think Variety itself reported up his comments at first, cutting them off just with the "I refute my Jewishness" part, and they got so much flack on Twitter for it that they corrected the copy. Good. Our former co-host Batya Ungar-Sargon also got a lot of flack for including just a truncated version of that quote on Twitter. A lot of people were pushing that. I think for the exact reason you described, it does make it sound like he's saying something about not being proud to be Jewish, as opposed to the opposite, which is to say, I think the legacy of what my people has experienced is exactly why we should be very clear-eyed and vocal about not wanting to repeat the mistakes of the past, and certainly not use our experiences as Jewish people to justify or validate tragedies being inflicted on other kinds of people. But there's a broader conversation here about whether or not people in Hollywood like Glazer are feeling a kind of outsized pressure not to say much about this. Susan Sarandon notably was dropped by her talent agency after she spoke at a pro-Palestine rally at the end of last year. And it does seem the timing of the CNN review, so many months after the movie came out, is being raised as suspicious. Now, I think there's an argument that says, well, a movie wins an Oscar, maybe there's a renewed interest in it.
Yeah.
But if that similar kind of approach wasn't taken to all of the Oscar-winning movies, and the fact that the review was not just bad, like I didn't like the movie sort of a bad, but seemed to go out of its way to misunderstand the movie, saying that it was too subtle. At one point, one of the members of this family, I haven't seen it yet, but
I have not seen it either.
One of the members of the family, the Nazi family that's living next to a death camp, pulls a human jawbone out of a stream, and
it's contemporaneous. It takes place during the Holocaust.
Yes. And the reviewer is like, that's too subtle. How is the audience supposed to know that this is supposed to be about the horrors of a concentration camp? And it's like,
it sounds the opposite of too subtle.
100%. 100%. But the movie, as I understand it, it juxtaposes the kind of pastoral kind of nature-filled beauty of these people's lives with the fact that they are living right next to some of the most horrible things that have ever been done in humanity, and happy and ignoring it, and it's a commentary on the banality of evil. And for a reviewer to miss that, it does start to feel like, well, maybe has an agenda in missing the point of the film, and maybe this is a kind of attack that's based on the politics as opposed to the substance of the art.
Did you ever see the film? It's a German film. It's called The White Ribbon. It was my favorite kind of, sort of about the rise of Nazism, although it actually takes place like in the year before World War I. It's a very good film. I saw it in college, and it just takes place in a German village. It's really a very the past sucked kind of film. Like these are poor peasants in a German village, and there's this series of strange crimes. It's almost like a whodunit. And it basically turns out, they don't really solve it, but it turns out that it's the children in the village are doing it. And you, like, if you do the time periods, like, these are the kids that are going to grow up to be Nazis, but they're doing it because they're bored and their circumstances are, like, religiously oppressive, and there's some wealth inequality, but then it quickly doesn't become about that. It becomes about their, like, rage as children in the system. It's a really good film. I highly recommend it for some suitably subtle, how could fascism become possible kind of films.
Yeah, well, I mean, I do think what's so interesting and important about Jonathan Glazer's choice to make this speech is that this could be a world where, you know, he's just an Oscar-winning director or screenwriter, or he just happens to be an Oscar-winning director and screenwriter who is also Jewish but hasn't done a movie that's explicitly about the Holocaust. But it was all of those things at once, and the film was, rightly so, getting a lot of praise because of its kind of fresh perspective on such an important topic that is germane to what's going on today in the eyes of many people. So the irony of him getting so much backlash, sometimes at times from the same people who were very complimentary of the film because they read it more narrowly as a warning against repeating harms against Jewish people, as opposed to more broadly against repeating those kind of genocidal harms writ large. You know, never again versus never again for anybody. There's some irony to that, and I do think it was kind of like a perfect sort of a political moment. And whatever you think about the backlash, it certainly is continuing and interesting to talk and think about. Stick with us. We've got more Rising for you coming up next.